They laughed at him. Cruelly. Every word dripping with hatred. No one knew he was new, no one dared to stand up. But why were the bullies so bold? What dark secret was hiding behind his quiet eyes? Then came the whispers, the teachers, the principal, the whole school, they had no idea who he really was. He was just a kid, or so they thought. What happens next would shock the entire school to its core. Because the truth. The boy's father didn't just fund the cafeteria, the classrooms, the sports fields. He owned the school. Every brick, every dollar, every rule. And by the end of this story, the bullies would regret ever thinking they were untouchable. Stay with us, because what happens next will leave your jaw on the floor. The first day at a new school is always terrifying. Every hallway echoes with laughter that isn't yours. Every glance feels like judgment. But for some, it's worse, far worse, because some students feed on fear like predators in the wild. Ethan had imagined this day 1,000 times. He pictured the awkward introductions, the curious stares, maybe even a few friendly faces. What he did not imagine was the kind of cruelty that would hit him the moment he stepped onto the polished floors of Crestwood High. The bullies were already there, like vultures waiting for prey. They could smell nervousness. They thrived on it. And for Ethan, the humiliation began immediately. Sharp whispers, shoved books, snickers that echoed through the hallways. But the thing about this school, the thing no one suspected, was that it wasn't just any high school. Behind its grand hallways, its state-of-the-art science labs, its perfectly manicured sports fields, was money, a lot of it. And Ethan's family wasn't just another donor. His father controlled it all. Every teacher, every club, every penny that flowed through the school's budget. Yet here he was. Treated like he belonged in the trash. The question that would haunt the bullies, and the audience, was simple: what happens when the prey turns out to hold all the power? If you enjoy jaw-dropping stories like this, don't forget to like the video and subscribe, because the ending will blow your mind. Ethan's first period was math. He tried to stay invisible, hoping the day would pass quietly. But as soon as he walked into the classroom, a group of seniors noticed him. "Hey, new kid." A tall boy with a sneer called. "Do you even know which way the classroom is?" Laughter erupted immediately. Ethan's stomach twisted, but he forced a smile. Yes, I think so." The boy didn't let up. "Think so? Wow, confidence." More laughter. They leaned over his desk, grabbing his books and tossing them across the floor. "Oops. Did I do that?" Ethan said, trying to remain calm. But the bullies didn't care. Their cruelty was precise, almost rehearsed. Every insult, every shove, was calculated to make him feel small. And small he felt. Until the cafeteria. He walked through the bustling room, tray in hand, only to have a spilled drink fall across his shirt. The bullies laughed so hard it was a soundtrack to his humiliation. "Seriously?" Ethan muttered under his breath, brushing off the wet fabric. But then he noticed something strange. The cafeteria monitor, Mrs. Whitman, gave him a peculiar glance, like recognition. Ethan ignored it. He had bigger problems. Lunch was torture. The bullies circled him like sharks. "Where's your dad?" one jeered. "Can't buy you out of this one." Ethan froze. His father? Did they know? No. Not yet. But the words dug in, opening a wound he hadn't expected to bleed so soon. By mid-afternoon, the bullying escalated. During gym, a basketball hit him square in the back. In the locker room, his clothes were hidden. And worst of all, every teacher seemed oblivious. Or maybe afraid. But Ethan wasn't just any kid. His father, Gerald Clark, wasn't just rich, he was a titan in the education world. Clark Enterprises funded the school entirely. Without his father, the principal's salary would vanish, every sports program would collapse, even the much-lauded science lab would be reduced to nothing. And the students had no idea. Yet Ethan kept quiet. The plan wasn't revenge. Not yet. First, he had to survive, and observe. By Friday, the bullies had grown bolder. They cornered him in the hallway, shoving him against lockers, laughing at his every attempt to defend himself. "Man, you're pathetic. Bet your dad doesn't even know you exist," one taunted. Ethan's hands clenched into fists. Inside, he burned with rage, but outside, he smiled. That smile was a mask, hiding the storm. Then came the incident that would change everything. It was the school assembly. All students crowded into the auditorium, buzzing with chatter. The principal stepped onto the stage to announce something important. Ethan didn't think much of it. But as he scanned the room, he saw the bullies whispering and pointing at him, probably plotting the next attack. The principal cleared his throat. "Before we begin," he said, "I want to acknowledge an incredible supporter of Crestwood High. Someone whose generosity has transformed this school entirely." The lights dimmed, and a video began to play. Images of new classrooms, state-of-the-art equipment, even renovations to the sports fields filled the screen. And then the camera focused on a man in a sharp suit, tall, commanding, unmistakably powerful. "Mr. Gerald Clark," the principal announced, "whose contributions have made all of this possible." A murmur ran through the auditorium. Ethan's stomach sank. The bullies froze mid-whisper. That man was his father. The room erupted into applause. The bullies' faces turned pale. One of them muttered, "No way, that's the new kid's dad." Ethan's pulse raced. Every insult, every shove, every snicker over the past week suddenly had a new weight. They hadn't just been bullying a stranger, they had been mocking the man who controlled everything in this school. The assembly ended, but the tension didn't. Hallways felt like minefields. Every eye seemed to flicker with recognition, awe, and fear. Ethan walked calmly, ignoring the stares, but inside, he plotted. He had endured the humiliation, and now it was time to change the game. That afternoon, he started small. He helped the janitor, fixed a broken locker quietly, and whispered advice to nervous students who were too afraid to speak up. Word spread fast, he was no longer just the new kid. He was someone different. By the end of the week, the bullies had begun to sense the shift. The sneers were replaced with nervous laughter. The confident shoves had vanished. But Ethan knew the real reckoning would come later, and it would be spectacular. Because power wasn't about physical strength. It was about leverage. Influence. Control. And Ethan's father had given him a playground of power disguised as a school. And when the bullies finally realized who he was, the fallout would be dramatic. Public. Humiliating. Unforgettable. So for now, he played the part of the quiet, bullied student. But beneath the calm exterior, a storm was brewing. And by the time it hit, the school would never be the same. The following Monday, Crestwood High felt different. The hallways weren't just crowded, they were tense. Whispers followed Ethan like shadows. Every locker slam, every shuffle of shoes, every nervous laugh made it clear, the bullies had realized something had changed. Ethan walked calmly, his backpack slung over one shoulder, ignoring the stares. Inside, he smiled faintly. They had no idea how deep the storm ran. It started small. During first period, Ethan raised his hand. "Excuse me, Mr. Rogers," he said to the math teacher. "The new lab computers in the classroom, they're offline. I think there's a wiring issue." The teacher, surprised, immediately called the IT department. Within minutes, the lab was running perfectly again. Students murmured. "Wow, he actually knows what he's talking about," someone whispered. The bullies exchanged glances, uneasy. For the first time, they felt powerless. Not because Ethan was physically strong, but because he knew how to pull strings. By lunchtime, Ethan executed the first stage of his plan. He offered help to a group of students struggling with their school project. While guiding them, he casually mentioned the new library resources funded by his father. The Clark Foundation donated all of this, he said. It's amazing what proper funding can do. Murmurs rippled through the cafeteria. And then the whispers reached the bullies. Wait. The new kid's dad owns the school, one muttered, his voice barely audible. Ethan's eyes scanned the cafeteria, noting the exact reactions. The fear, the awe, the disbelief, it was perfect. That afternoon, the first real strike happened. The bullies, emboldened by arrogance, cornered him in the hallway, trying the old shoves and insults. Still think you're untouchable, the tall bully sneered. Ethan didn't flinch. Instead, he calmly reached into his backpack and pulled out a tablet. Actually, he said, voice steady, I think it's time we show everyone who really runs this school. With a swipe, the tablet synced to the school's announcement system. In a flash, every screen in the building, classrooms, hallways, cafeteria, lit up with a live feed of the bully's previous harassment, shoving him, stealing his books, mocking his clothes, laughing at his spilled lunch. Gasps filled the halls. Students stopped in their tracks, eyes wide. The bullies froze, pale. Their confident smirks dissolved into terror. Is this real? One whispered. Yes, Ethan said quietly, almost kindly. And it's just the beginning. By the end of the day, the principal received a call from none other than Gerald Clark himself. The man's voice was calm but sharp. I hear my son has been having some trouble at school. Make sure the environment is corrected immediately, or I'll do it myself. The principal's knees practically buckled. Clark's donations weren't just generous. They were the school's lifeblood. Without them, every program would collapse, every teacher's job could be at risk. And everyone knew it. The bullies tried to apologize. Stammering words, nervous laughter. But Ethan remained composed. He didn't humiliate them in front of the entire school, not yet. That would come later. Over the next week, Ethan subtly began reshaping the school's social order. He organized study groups, encouraged teamwork, helped underclassmen navigate the tricky social landscape. Every action quietly highlighted his intelligence, empathy, and influence. Students who once ignored him began looking up to him. Meanwhile, the bullies' reputation crumbled. Every petty action they had taken against Ethan was now exposed, every rumor about their untouchable status proved false. The cafeteria, once their kingdom, became a place of whispers and fear whenever they tried to assert dominance. Then came the final act. It was during the school's annual talent show, broadcast live to every classroom. The bullies had signed up to perform a comedy skit, planning to embarrass a shy freshman. Ethan saw the opportunity. Why don't you let me help? He offered the freshman backstage. It'll be fun. The student hesitated. Are you sure? Trust me. When the performance began, the bullies took the stage, confident as ever. The auditorium filled with laughter, at first, from their rehearsed jokes. Then, Ethan triggered the live feed on the big screens. Clips of their bullying were broadcast for the entire school to see, pushing him, mocking him, stealing his homework, and laughing at his clothes. The laughter died instantly. Shock replaced humor. Teachers gasped. Parents who had come to watch were stunned. The bullies froze, their faces crimson, unable to continue. Ethan walked onto the stage calmly, microphone in hand. I guess the joke's on you, he said, his voice echoing through the auditorium. Because bullying doesn't just hurt, it exposes weakness. And we all see it now. The crowd erupted into applause, not for Ethan's power, but for his courage. The bullies were escorted off the stage by teachers, faces burning with shame. After the show, the principal called a school-wide assembly. Gerald Clark arrived in person this time. He didn't shout. He didn't humiliate. He simply stood at the podium and said, Crestwood High exists to nurture talent, intelligence, and character. It does not exist to reward cruelty. Every student felt the weight of his presence. The bullies had been powerful in their arrogance, but power had limits. True influence came from respect, from integrity, and yes, from the right connections. Ethan's father looked at him with a subtle nod. Pride and recognition shining through. The boy who had endured a week of torment had transformed humiliation into mastery. He had taken control without ever striking a single blow. From that day forward, the school's culture shifted. Bullying didn't disappear overnight, but fear of unchecked cruelty was replaced by accountability. Students who once lurked in shadows now worked together. And the bullies? They were no longer leaders, they were cautionary tales whispered through the hallways. Ethan didn't boast. He didn't flaunt his father's power. Instead, he became a quiet force of change, proving that even the youngest, most underestimated student could turn the tides with strategy, patience, and courage. By the end of the year, he wasn't just the new kid. He was the student who had changed Crestwood High forever. The boy who had been mocked, humiliated, and underestimated had rewritten the rules of power, respect, and influence, all without lifting a fist. And as for the bullies? Every glance they cast at him was filled with regret. Every whisper carried fear. They had learned a lesson they would never forget: cruelty has consequences. And sometimes, those consequences are served with shocking, unstoppable precision. If you enjoyed this jaw-dropping story, don't forget to like this video and subscribe, because the ending proves that even the smallest, quietest person can change everything, and the payoff is unforgettable.